In Fallout 3, at one point on your quest to get a GECK, a terraforming device created by Future Tech, a division of Vault Tech, you might stumble upon the infamous Vault 87. When first trying to enter the vault, you will notice just outside the location there are many radiation warning signs, suggesting that this vault was outputting a lot of radiation even before the bombs dropped. And if you actually try to go towards the two entrances of the vault, you will be killed immediately by the immense amount of radiation you immediately are pummeled with. Luckily though, if you make your way back to Lamplight City, a giant underground town full of children who lost their parents after they all tried to go to the surface to get help, you are told about a supposed murder pass that you can cross to get to Vault 87 from the underground. The children of Lamplight had previously explored deeper into the underground cave systems and found the vault, but the inhabitants on the other side said to turn back because they were already doomed. So if you find one of the two ways into the vault, either through a computer terminal or by fighting your way through an army of super mutants guarding the door, you eventually get to the entrance. When you first enter the vault, you are met with a buffet of mutilated bodies and corpses. And if you find one of the terminals at the entrance, you read the story of a man who slowly descends into insanity, watching his children and those around him die. As you make your way further into the vault, you find a host of gore bags, used by the super mutants to serve other humans as food. And you find more terminals that express that many people in the vault had no idea what was actually going on at the time, and were confused. Journal entries note that there were many power surges, weird experiments, and strange sounds many of the early residents complained about. And you eventually even find a terminal entry that notes 93 people have died in the vault, with 83 being listed under a strange and mysterious, unidentifiable death condition. If you manage to make your way even deeper into this twisted vault, you are met with multiple bloody handprints, scenes of horror, and finally, a room where you can find multiple testing chambers full of dead, early-generation super mutants. The scientists in the vault were experimenting on the human inhabitants by dousing them with high amounts of FEV radiation, also known as the Force Evolutionary Virus, which was the virus spawned out of developing a cure for the new plague. These deadly doses had transformed many of the inhabitants into absolute monstrosities known as super mutants, the first generation of their kind, with many having busted limbs, small lower bodies and massive upper bodies, and other weird disfigurements. You discover that there was something known as EEP testing going on here, otherwise known as the Evolutionary Experimentation Program, and that the male and female test subjects were being exposed to insanely high amounts of FEV radiation in order to study the effects, which turned most of the vault dwellers into asexual and imperfect super mutants. Eventually, these super mutants became enraged at the horrible testing they had undergone and led an assault against the vault, killing the remaining members. And it can even be discovered at the end of the vault that the FEV radiation we discovered outside was actually done on purpose by Vault Tech to test the effects of FEV on nearby surrounding towns as well. A truly unbelievable experiment that truly went too far. One of my personal favorite vaults in the entire Fallout franchise is Vault 108, affectionately known as the Gary Vault. Located in the wilderness of Fallout 3 lies a mysterious door hidden behind a large rock formation. When you first enter, you find a dead body on the ground, and even more interestingly, a vault door left completely wide open. As you step inside, you are met with a scene of horror. Blood marks cover the walls, furniture is thrown around, and the generators powering the vault are completely offline. You find dead Wastelander bodies of those trying to loot the facility all over, but the true horror comes when you find the body labeled Gary 42 after just being attacked by an extremely similar looking person named Gary 33. As you make your way deeper into the vault, you slowly uncover that it is littered with an army of clones of this one man, Gary, all hilariously shouting at you the entire time.
Gary!
And if you have the courage to go even deeper into this twisted vault, you eventually uncover that a scientist was performing experiments of cloning, and even find a sectioned off female dorm blocked by tons of cabinets, suggesting that at one point they had barricaded themselves inside, presumably to protect themselves from men who can't stop shouting their name. The true intrigue, though, comes if you go to the Pentagon in Fallout 3, because it's here we can open top secret terminal information on multiple vaults, including Vault 108. The vault was originally set to perform experiments in cloning over a span of 30 years, but the generators were only spec'd for 20. We can find multiple reports of complaints from the vault residents, but all were shot down by the vault tech higher-ups. On top of this, the original overseer, which for those of you who don't know is essentially the leader of any vault, was known to have cancer, and we can find discussions estimating his death after 3 years, followed up by a journal entry stating, "These two events should combine to allow a proper catalyst that allows this project to continue as planned." So something was going on in this vault that most people living there weren't aware of, and it leads us to even more questions than it answers. What were these cloning experiments for? How did so many clones survive for so long? Were the experiments to find immortality? And why are there female dorms but no male dorms? Could it be, as YouTuber Oxhorn postulates, that the true experiment of the vault was putting a large group of females all with one cloned male to see what happens? Either way, it's clear that at some point the Gary clones started to become more and more aggressive, and with time eventually overtook the vault, which coincidentally we see in the Pentagon logs stocked with 3 times the normal amount of munitions. So maybe when the generators turned off, the Garys all grabbed the guns and started screaming Gary while massacring the entire vault and its inhabitants. A horrifying idea to think about. For those that found themselves in Vault 11 after the Great War, life would have been good. That is until the Overseer announced the rules of the vault. Every year, one person inside would have to be sacrificed in order to appease the mainframe. Otherwise, all would perish in an instant. This initial announcement was met with huge uproar, and all citizens of the vault banded together and voted for the Overseer to be used as the first sacrifice. He resisted at first, but the residents were able to guess his password to his computer, controlling the death chamber as his wife's name, and he was sentenced to death. He walked his way down a short hallway and was met with a small room that held nothing but a projector and a single seat, and it was here he met his final demise. After this incident, it was decided that each year a new overseer for the vault would be voted in by all residents and later sacrificed to appease the mainframe. But this resulted in many of the vault dwellers banding together and creating blocks. That way they could team up and decide who would be chosen next. Every year, particularly hated individuals from each block would give speeches on why they should not be chosen as the next overseer, with many using their loving families and children as a way to guilt others into not choosing them. The strongest of these groups was referred to as the Justice Block, and in one year, a man named Nathan from a separate block had beaten many of the Justice Block members in poker, which very much angered them. And because of the power they held in the vault, it became apparent that Nathan was most likely going to be voted as the next overseer and die. In order to save her husband, Nathan's wife Catherine decided to meet with the Justice Block and ask for forgiveness. But they told her the only way they would forgive is if they were all to have their way with her. And so they did for months on end, until it eventually became clear that even after Catherine's sacrifice, Nathan was still going to be voted as the next overseer. In retaliation, Catherine went on a murdering spree of multiple members of the Justice Block, and because of this was swiftly voted by all vault dwellers as the next overseer. Now with complete control of the vault, Catherine decided to change the rules of the simulation, instead opting to choose a random person each year to death to appease the mainframe, rather than leaving it to a vote. The Justice Block began to go into turmoil over the idea they may lose power, with some members arguing they just needed to wait until one of the members got the overseer job to change the rules, but it was too late, and a brawl broke out between the Justice League and other vault dwellers. Now with the majority of the citizens left dead, the remaining members vowed to never again sacrifice anyone to the mainframe, and instead all band together and die as one. But when the time finally came that the next sacrifice had to happen, the mainframe simply congratulated the survivors on using human decency and finally solving the puzzle of the vault. The mainframe opened the door to the vault and wished the dwellers the best of luck. Pure guilt and dismay overcame the remaining survivors, and they all decided to create a death pact where they all killed one another, except for one survivor, who walked out of the vault knowing every detail of the horrors that had transpired. To this day, we still do not know who that lone survivor is. Some speculate it is No Bark from Fallout New Vegas, but we will never know, and that one person may have some of the most twisted trauma in the entire series. While we do get to explore some of the most disturbing vaults in all of Fallout in the games, some have so far only been left to players' imaginations, and two of the most unbelievable of these are Vault 68 and Vault 69. Each of the vaults was performing the same experiment but reversed. In Vault 68, they were staffed with 999 men and 1 woman. In Vault 69, they were staffed with 999 women and 1 man. Each of these experiments was to see what would happen when only one of each sex was left with hundreds of the opposing. While little is known about what actually happened in these vaults, we can pick up on small tidbits we see in comments or canceled projects, or just our own imagination to paint a brutal scene. In Vault 68, the one full of men and 1 woman, it is theorized that the men started to fight amongst one another, resulting in a bloody mess, where only the most dominant of each tribe were able to have their way with the one unlucky female. Population growth would have been exceptionally slow, and any baby that the female had that was male was instantly killed off, slowly leading to the death of the entire vault as the female withered away. In Vault 69, however, where only 1 man was tasked with repopulating with 999 females, not much is known either. But it can be assumed that early on, the man would have been living out what many males would consider a fantasy, only to realize he had no male friends to confide in, slowly going insane after impregnating and repopulating much of the vault. The females, on the other hand, would have lived a mostly amazing life, free from our bullshit. After stepping into a variety of vaults in Fallout, it quickly becomes apparent that these underground lairs were host to some of the most dark and abhorrent tests in humanity's history. But one specific vault may have the most twisted experiment of them all. It's a vault that doesn't make any official appearances in the games, but it is canon based on one comic referencing it. It tells the story of one man who is tricked into entering the vault on his own, after which the door is quickly shut behind him. He pleads and screams to be let out, but no one answers his call. For months he keeps himself alive every day, praying that someone will find and rescue him, or that this sick experiment will finally come to an end. But this waiting game goes on for over a year as this poor soul is slowly starting to lose his mind and see things. But just as he is about to lose all hope, he discovers a giant box of puppets. He starts to enact different plays and scenes with them, and it gives him a jolt of energy and excitement to finally again have new friends. These scenes slowly become more and more crazy though, and he starts to associate life with the puppets, hearing them speaking to him as he descends deeper and deeper into madness. So deep into his own delusion, the man develops split personality disorder and begins to communicate through each personality with multiple puppets. And it is around this time that we discover that the vault has actually been open this whole time. The man was merely too afraid to leave on account of the bombs outside. But with his newfound personalities, he gathers the courage and escapes the vault, meeting multiple ghouls, raiders, and wildlife. One of the raider groups he meets grows suspicious and scared of the man though, worried he is actually very violent and dangerous. And well, this turns out to be true, as a puppet tells the man to kill, and he does, slaughtering all the raiders and their families, showing that the vault was not protecting this man from the dangers outside, but that the vault was protecting outside from the dangers of this man. As to whether we will ever meet this sadistic human being in a future Fallout entry, we'll just have to wait and find out.